Thank
Thank
you.
Prof.
I will stop
Thank you,
sharing.
Prof. Khatijah. Yeah, yes, I think she has, Prof. Khatijah has bring us into another world of data analysis. She's very passionate about it, and I'm sure among you they are too. So there are some questions that has been building up, but let me ask these few questions first. And later on, you can also ask verbal question, yeah? Okay, there is this question, well, either Prof. Khatijah or Dr. Sofurah can answer. Can we combine case study with grounded theory in our research?
I think the floor should be for Dr. Sofurah. Yes?
Yeah, either one, yeah?
Yeah. Would you like to take it, Dr. Sofurah?
It's okay, Prof. If you want to take it, that's yours.
No.
Fine. Or maybe both of us can share.
Yeah,
yes.
sure.
Okay.
Sure. You go first then. Yeah, sure. No problem.
All right. From my reading, especially, and my own experiences, we can actually combine approaches that, at least that I've been sharing just now. But then I also came across from many authors regarding their advices on combining is not really advisable for novice researchers unless for experienced researchers, or the experienced researchers are with the novice researchers. What it meant is just that, to understand the fundamental or the foundation of the nature of qualitative inquiry or qualitative research is the most important part. So for my own students, at least, what I will advise to them is accept that we are together in a grant research or such, and then we have senior researchers in qualitative research, and then it could be managed. But otherwise, I personally will advise that basically we follow the foundation of it and we try to stick with one approach, especially for students, for postgraduate students, and for novice researchers in qualitative. And that's also supported by, from my readings, and especially in the book that I'm actually adapting on Presswell. He actually stated in a small paragraph about that advice as well. Yeah, so how about your take, Prof?
Declare, I'm quite a purist qualitative person. And I believe that each case study got their own philosophical assumptions, and grounded theory also have their philosophical assumptions. Now, my only thing is that that's one. So if you do case study and grounded theory, you need to justify why you need to use two philosophical assumptions and how do they fit each other. I know that in case study, the philosophical assumption, the most important key point about case study is about they address the how and the why. So it's talking about the processes. And you can arguably say that in grounded theory, we are looking at processes. That's where certain people actually say that their philosophical assumptions are similar. But don't forget, they are not the same. Because if they're the same, then we don't have case study design and grounded theory design. They are slight different. So to me, if you can justify it, how they actually integrate to get a better interpretation, I would think that your examiner or the publisher would accept it. The reviewer will accept it. Now, the second question is that if you're thinking this project is a PhD study, you only got 3 years, right? Now, if you want to mix and match two philosophical assumptions, if I'm the examiner, just say, I will drill you on how much you know about case study and how much you know about grounded theory, and that's why you use both. So in this sense, you need to spend more time knowing what is case study and grounded theory, right? Because grounded theory come out with a theory. So if you said you use grounded theory in your project, are you going to come up with a theory? Where is the theory? Because grounded theory analysis got constant comparison to derive the 3 level of coding to have a theory. So you will need a more thoughts and justification. I'm not saying cannot, But if you're given 3 years, discuss with the supervisor, all right, whether if you can read enough and justified it, why not? I hope that answers your questions, because at the end of the day, it's your justification and how these philosophical assumptions help you to analyze those data to give you an answer. If you can do that, you ace the game. Yeah, so there's no hard and fast rule, because case study use thematic analysis usually. They don't have an analysis method at all. Most people use thematic, or, well, they say content analysis, right? So thank you so much for the question. I hope that answer, or Datin, you want to share your thoughts? Because Datin is also very experienced in case study, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Anyway, Prof. Khatijah, there is a few more questions coming in, but this one is to you. Is Prof. Khatijah, you mentioned about inductive reasoning for coding just now. That is from large amount of data, and then you have reduction of codes and to get themes. What are your thoughts about deductive reasoning, which is identification of theme first, then only searching through the text for evidence?
Okay. Actually, if you do deductive, you will have a problem when you submit for examiners. I mean, examining your thesis, or even if you submit papers, because if you're talking about themes, it's usually inductive. If you're doing deductive, you're biased already. You actually are not identifying themes from the participant. You yourself have set those themes from your own opinion from the literature. The literature is from different participants who told you about this theme. So those participants is not the same like your participant, because we cannot generalize those themes to my participant. So I would say that if you say you deduct it, you have a set themes, then the question is, why are you doing qualitative where you're supposed to inductively derive your meaning? So I would think you have a harder time to convince the examiner that it is okay to do deductive derived themes, because that actually you already preconceived ideas and you are biased. You choose those themes you think is important, but what about your participant? They may have other thoughts about it, but you are not letting them say it out to report it because you set those themes already. Now, that is where the framework analysis, there was argument about it. Now, framework analysis also have a set of predetermined themes. And how people argue is that they will say that the set predetermined themes in the framework analysis was from the first 2 or 3 codes. So when they independently coded 2 or 3 of them, and they actually agreed these are the codes, they use these codes as a guide for the subsequent 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 interview. But they also put a caveat there to say that they will add in new codes if the subsequent participants have new issues to bring up. So that's fine, because it's actually back to the participant. The initial code framework was actually from the first 3 participants. And people like it because then it also can confirm saturation. Because in the first 3 says, so we also see whether the 4, 5, 6, 7 people also say the same thing or not. So it actually helps you at the end of the day to prove data saturation. And it's still inductive because it's not from the literature, should not be. So I hope that answered your questions. So deductive, yeah, I think the question of Miss No is deductive induction similar to framework analysis? No, because framework analysis, you do inductively from the first 3 participants. Then only you use it to frame your 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's still from your participant, not from other literature reported participant, which you should not use really because it's a different context. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Prof. Prof, there is another question here which maybe you or Dr. Sofurah can answer. This is about, he says that in quantitative, we do content validation and phase validation. What about in quali? This is a common question.
Dr. Sofurah, you want to try that?
It's okay, Prof. You can start first, and I can share my view after that.
Sure, thanks, Dr. Sofurah. Okay, actually, yeah, you're very correct. The person, I forgot the name, who actually raised the question. We are a bit upset when we see any papers or any thesis that say about content and face validation. Because if you remember your quantitative paradigm study, content and face validation is usually you have a number, you run a kappa or some terms, you know, where you get the consensus. And then you say this is valid, right? Or you do a phase one where you have an expert panel and they check your questionnaire and give you your what. So in a way, in qualitative, we are very weird researchers. We want to be different. We don't want to confuse people. So our phase and content validity is actually like the credibility and the transferability of the data. How valid is your data? As we know, valid is talking about is supposed to measure what you are measuring, right? Whereas reliability is consistently measuring. Yeah. So the validity is the things that you say must measure exactly what you want to measure. Like, for example, I want to talk about experience of Down syndrome parents. So that is what I want to measure indirectly. So I want to understand. So in terms of content and face validity, we actually replace it with like credibility. How credible is your analysis? That means, do you check it with participant, or do you check it with your team member, or do you check it with expert panel? Same thing, face validity, expert panel. Credibility, you've got your own researcher team to check your coding. So is, I would say, splitting hair, same meaning, different words. And this is important because basically, you know, people say trade smart. So in order to show this as a qualitative and not confused with a quantitative, the language we use, I believe, and I support it, should be different because we are unique. We are talking about what people think in their head and not what people show, like, you know, 1, 2, 3. So those words, same meaning, only the language. So credibility and transferability, how you actually measure it and you can transfer it, you know. So in that sense, it is face and content validity. It's just that we don't use those words. It's no lah. I mean, if you're a quality person lah. Thank you so much. What about you, Dr. Sofurah? What do you think about it?
Yes, as much as how Prof has put it eloquently, I think my part is to add a little bit of more of my personal opinion and also from what I get from my research, my own research study. It reminds me on an argument that we actually, my own self and my supervisors had been sitting down and talk about it. And in the end, when we talk about reliability, validity, credibility, we tend to use the word trustworthiness. And trustworthiness, like Prof. Katie has said, it's actually a good term and a quite recognizable term among the qualitative researchers. And it would put ourselves, you know, different from other readers to think about quantitative research when they read our qualitative research. So it just puts us in a different world, or how Prof. Katie was saying, we are just weird people. Well, yes, and I also want to add more on validity because we look into internal validity, and that's what qualitative research, you know, is actually focusing on. And I think one of the author, or even if you want a reference to who actually may concern, you can have a look on Miles, Huberman, and Saldanha's book. You know, I think it's 2017. The three of them actually combine. Well, the three of them are actually main authors, and then they combine themselves and write a book, which I believe is very useful for qualitative researchers to conduct. And the way they put it is like they tend to differentiate in qualitative what reliable means, you know, and the things that we can. Reliable means that how much, you know, care has been put, you know, so that someone who reads it can trust that this is being honest, the data is being honest, and we have put our biases on, you know, on the paper or on the thesis, or, you know, we have put thoughts on the biases to make it more reliable. And that's how qualitative things about reliability. And in terms of validity, there's two parts. As according to Malcolm and Salzana, there's two parts of it. It's internal validity and there's external validity. But to understand more, we use the word transferability. For external validity, we tend to use the word transferability because we have to sort of put our mind that qualitative research, because of the nature that it is small and contextual, in-depth, it's not generalizable, so it's always transferable. So when we talk about transferable, so how can someone else, when they read our work, how can they actually, sort of transfer the knowledge into their own work, and how much they can do it is actually really much depending on how we actually, articulate it in our writing. So I think that's it for my additional point on Prof. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sofurah. I'm also very aware of the time. We are supposed to end at about 11:15, but there are so many questions coming in. So some of it, because I think it is related, so I won't be asking them. But there is I'm going to ask one or two more questions, and we will end the session. I think Dr. Sofurah and Prof. Khatijah has given their email. So if any of you have any questions, is it all right for them to email you? Maybe you can put, if it's agreeable, you can put your email on Dr. Sofurah and Prof. Khatijah can put it at the chat if you, and anyone can can email you. But I have one question here. Yeah. If I want to do exploratory mixed method, okay, which analysis method is suitable for qualitative part, thematic or content? Who wants to answer this?
I'll take it then. Yeah, I'll take it because it's talking about analysis, right? Actually, mixed method. Some people would do the quantity of course, quantitative analysis. The quality part depend. Some students are very, very passionate. They say the quality part I want to do philology. Okay, for me, actually, if it's a mixed method, you do not really need to do a design qualitative. You can do a generic. Right. But if you do a phenomenology, of course, then your analysis will follow phenomenological data analysis style, which is if you do fusion of horizon, phenomenological analysis using Georgi or Wickham or Mustaka. So those are settled if you have a philosophical framework. Now, just say you said, no, Prof, I don't want phenomenology, it's too philosophical. I wanted to do my qualitative using case study. Now, case study by itself, I'm not an expert in it, but case study by itself didn't really prescribe an analysis approach like phenomenology or grounded theory, where you require the 3 selective accent and open coding. So in a case study, people have used thematic and also content analysis. Now, personally, I'm always not very keen on content analysis because content analysis originally have classic one actually have frequency in it. So unless there was 2 types of content analysis, if you really look at latent and manifest. So one manifest is where you don't count. So because for me, when you start saying you analyze by counting how often the word love come into it, that's why your team is about love relationship. I will be a bit dubious because I really don't think that a person who say I love you 1,000 times really meant he loves you more than a person who say 100 times. I think it's other things also really. So I will go more for thematic analysis. Actually, thematic analysis, you will see that even in grounded theory, in phenomenology, some of them actually says they use thematic analysis. It seems to be like the most basic principle. It's like your SPSS. The most basic is chi-square t-test, very few, I don't know, but that's how I perceived it. So for me, your qualitative design analysis for mixed method depend on whether you use a philosophical framework. If you use a philosophical framework, assumptions like grounded theory, well, Prof. Tong will tell you, you must have open coding, selective, and accent. Sorry. So in that sense, or else you do thematic. But content and thematic has been used interchangeably recently.
Okay, thanks, Prof.
Thank you.
Prof,
Dr. Sofurah. Yeah.
Maybe I will just ask you first, then later we go to, because there is also these questions on reliability and validity. The question is, does it mean that in the qualitative, we replace validity and reliability with credibility, transferability, dependability, and conformability?
Yes. You will never write validity and reliability in a thesis, nor in any paper, most paper. You will use the qualitative terms, and that is the words that we use, either credibility, transferability, or trustworthiness, or even doing an audit trail to illustrate the process is so clear that people can follow it. So there is about five or six, or use a negative case. I mean, in most books, this is one of the most important chapter, and one of the chapters that all your examiner will be very keen to find out how you ensure that. So please do consider that, because those are the qualitative terms. It's like when you're Malaysia, we always use Malaysian language term, yeah. So in qualitative, we do have our own term to denote the specialized approach that we are using. Thank you so much, Subun. So
Okay,
back to you.
I'm going to ask you one last question here, then the rest I will ask Sofurah.
Okay, sure.
Okay, now what is your thought on meta-analysis or thematic analysis in a qualitative concept paper?
When you talk about meta-analysis, you're talking about qualitative data, right? And you're talking about literature review, systematic review. I think there was a professor from Thailand, I forgot her name, who is in Australia, who actually do meta-analysis of qualitative findings. To me, meta-analysis sometimes get a connotation of being very statistically oriented. So most publication, if you say that you do a systematic review of qualitative paper, they usually accept and publish it. So I got no, I have no stand on, to me, meta-analysis, if there's no number and it's actually purely thematic, analyzing all those accumulated paper on that subject matter, and you actually then come to a conclusion what was the most common themes that come across again and again across all the papers, I should think that is acceptable as a review. Thanks, Subun.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Dr. Sofurah, there is a question here. It says that I'm confused over phenomenological and then ethnography. So I seek your opinion. There is a few questions on this, yeah. What is the difference between case study and phenomenology, and etc.? Do you want to kind of, I don't think we have the time to explain everything. So I wonder you can give some advice, Dr. Sofurah.
Thank you, Dr. Ng, and thank you for the one who actually asked the question. As we put it, it's not a straightforward answer. It's actually good to discuss on it, because it's very important for us to lay out and map out, the gist of the research and what lens are you looking at. And the thing that the table or the schedule or the table, I can say, that has been shared just now, is actually a good introduction on mapping. So if we can see the difference between case study or what was that just now, phenomenology and ethnography or case study? Sorry, Dr.
Yeah, there are a few questions, but basically it's about confusion over the various. I think they need to read more. So maybe and also there are another questions on discourse analysis, the content and all. So I think it is maybe you can point towards where to.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think it's understandable. All right. So yes, the differences is actually a lecture in itself. Yeah, just like
correct.
Yeah. So it's good that actually this question is being asked. We have a session, a small closed group discussion on research design coming up in September. So anyone who's interested to find out more about the discussion, it's actually a monthly session, and we change the topic every month. So it will be advertised usually in the SGFB group. So if anybody wants, to have a chance to discuss about it and to know more about research design, it will be a topic for the September topic. And then another one, I think very important for the researchers to start with about reading on transferability, credibility, audit trail and such is from Miles, Huberman, and Saldana, and I have looked into the book just now. It's at page 312. Exactly what Kathy has said was exactly what Miles, Huberman, and Saldana has been telling about 2 or 3 pages. Yeah, so it's a good reference to start with. Thank you, Datin.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, the time is catching up, but I know that if I don't ask this question, some people might not be able to sleep. Yeah, so I think maybe either you or Prof. Just last questions. Okay, how to combine findings from interview and observation? Question 1. Question 2. How to ensure reliability of qualitative data? No more. Just last 2 questions. Reliability. One, and the other one is about how to combine interview and observation.
Okay, fine. I think we just jump into it because time is short. Yeah, right. Correct. Okay. Basically, no matter if you use more than one method, especially in case study, they always encourage you to do multi-method. So what happened is that you do observations, you have to convert them into data. Whatever you observe, you write in textual. So you still code it. So you interview, you code it. And basically, you will see how these two, either they support each other or they show that actually there is something going on where there's a discrepancy. At the end of the day, these 2 data is actually answering your research question, right? That's why you do the 2 data collection. So basically, at the end of the day, your reader would like to know, so what does interview and observation say? Do they actually support each other? Or is there a discrepancy? And why is there a discrepancy if that's the case? So I would say that if you do 2 data collection, you have to analyze both, convert them to textual, transcribe, and code them. Because observation, you just have to code them so that you actually then see the similarity or the differences. That's the basic. The second question about reliability, it's similar to validity. And again, even in empirical quantitative studies, reliability, validity is very important to your reviewer and to your examiner. And in qualitative, we are very conscious about it. Of course, we want to make sure our data can be trusted. So again, it goes back. I think like Dr. Sofurah said, Miles and Huberman is the first one, if I'm not mistaken, who actually wrote chapters on it. And then subsequently, a lot of people then, oh yeah, they wake up and say, yeah, we have to, make it transparent to people how we arrive at this theory or how we arrive at these categories or team. So for reliability, in empirical quantitative, we say reliability is how accurate your instrument consistently measure the same thing. So I would say reliability is when you have data saturation, because the same question asked repeatedly to different people, different contexts, and they say the same thing. They are still very angry, or they're still very frustrated, even though they are different people, different contexts. So that is where your reliability is, the data collection, saturation, how you ensure that your interpretation is actually, that is the story. That's it. That's the end of the story. And this is how reliable it is, because it's different people. We actually make sure that they actually are saying the same thing or feeling the same thing. So a lot of people will say reliability means conformability and validity means trustworthiness. Well, let's put it that way. In qualitative, you lump them together. So if you're talking about validity and reliability, we just put how we do credibility, how we do transferability, how we do trustworthiness, and how we provide audit trail. So these 4 usually, when people read it and see where you are going and how you arrive at that answer, I think most people are reasonable. So it has to be very rational, systematic, and supportive, that the codes. And that your course is also showing your data reliability for me. So unfortunately, qualitative is not so like in quanti, where you have the Chromebook alpha, or you do test retest, where you got a number and you feel so happy about it. Because qualitative doesn't look at numbers. Numbers doesn't mean anything. You can say 1,000 times, but doesn't mean that it's good. That's all. Thank you so much, Dr. Subun. Back to you.
Thank you, Prof. Khatijah and Dr. Sofurah. I hope that we have answered most of your major questions. Prof. and also Dr. Sofurah, there is a question on asking for some references. If you could type there, if you remember, folks. Yeah. Okay. Now, there is a question on whether or not we give out certificate. So because this is a roadshow, we don't give out certificate because people can just come in. But if you have any need, please do email our secretariat. I think Dr. Sada have put down the secretariat email there already, right? So just email us in at your request. We will have a look. We are recording these sessions. Therefore, if Prof. Khatijah and Dr. Sofurah agree, consent to it, we can share the recording. Are you all right, Prof. Khatijah and Dr. Sofurah?
No problem at all. Sharing is caring, so that is for us to share our knowledge, and we welcome any comments.
Dr. Sofurah, are you all right?
Yes.
Yeah. So therefore, instead of sharing with you the slides, we will share with you the recording, but we won't be emailing you because there's so many of you. So probably what you can do is Dr. Sada there? Dr. Sada, can we put up our QRAM website there so that we want to encourage all of you to go up to our website so that you can see the activity that we have, including have a look at our upcoming conference. Then you can find the link to the recording there too. What do you think? Is that fine? Yeah. So please go to our QRAM website and for you to get the link to the recording. So Dr. Sada, you don't mind to put down the QRAM website there?
Yeah, it's Prof. Tong has already done that. Thanks.
Okay, all right, but I think maybe you can put one more time or whatever, so that because there are lots of messages there, yeah. Yep. And also not forgetting, we also have a Facebook. Ileana, Facebook. Do you have the link there? Facebook.
Yes, I already put it on the chat box.
Okay.
YouTube, our YouTube and Facebook also there.
Yeah. So we are also putting up the recording of this session up in the Facebook. Am I correct, Ileana?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So therefore, please go to those places to get today's recording instead of us sending you the PowerPoint. So thank you very much for attending this session. It's really a wow. 344 staying with us until the end. Thank you so much for having the passion on qualitative research as much as the ESCO and other people in Malaysia. So we wish you all the best. But